In today's video, we're taking a look at the latest rumors around the league. Another talk around the New York Rangers. Another blowout loss is leading to more speculation about what changes may happen now that the roster freeze has been lifted. Are we looking at a coaching change for Peter Laviolette? Could there be significant deals on the table for guys like Zibanejad, Kreider, K-Andre Miller, or others? Maybe even Alexis Lafreniere. There's been some discussions about a potential big deal with the Vancouver Canucks that we'll discuss as well. Plus some trade talk around Detroit and Buffalo and the St. Louis Blues. Plus, we have the Montreal Canadiens putting goalie Primeau on waivers today. We have a major upset at the World Junior Championships to discuss. Lots of other roster moves and news around the league, including the Dallas Stars being under investigation for violating the CBA. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have lots to discuss here today. Very newsworthy day around the NHL on this Saturday. Lots of NHL action on here today as well. Let's start first with the news from the NHL waiver wire. We got word yesterday that the Montreal Canadiens were calling up a prospect goaltender from Laval and that Primeau was going to be going on waivers today, and that indeed did happen. So Primeau's time in Montreal, at least at the NHL level, appears to be coming to a close. That rookie goaltender that they called up actually ended up playing against the Florida Panthers today and pitched a shutout. So, clearly a major upgrade on what they've been getting from Primeau. Primeau's appeared in 11 games this year, putting up an average of 4.7 goals against per game and only an .836 save percentage. Those are not numbers that are going to keep you anywhere near the NHL. They're not even good for the American Hockey League either. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen with Primeau. I don't know if another team will pick him up and give him a chance. There's teams out there that have injuries and are, testing their depth, so to speak. But with the way he's played, is he really an upgrade over, anybody else that they might have internally in the organization amongst these teams? So I'm going to say more than likely he clears, ends up going back down to the minors. He's on the final year of his contract. Could he spend the rest of the year down there? Will he be called up again? Hard to say. If he sees an extended stretch of good play, maybe they give him a chance. But all indications are their patience have run thin with waiting for better results on Primeau. Hasn't happened, so I suspect that this will spell the end of him in Montreal. We also have the Winnipeg Jets today placing prospect Daniel Torgerson on unconditional waivers for the purpose of contract termination. So they've mutually agreed to part ways on the contract, and he'll likely has opportunities to get more of a chance to play somewhere else, most likely over in Europe somewhere. So, of course, we had a trade earlier today. In case you missed it, there was a video on the channel between the Avalanche and the Predators. Nashville continues to, I guess you could say, kind of retool here on the fly. Barry Trotz has made a number of deals, nothing too substantial, but the expectation is that he's kind of working on gaining some roster flexibility and some additional cap space to maybe look towards a larger move. But he traded today Juuso Parssinen, who's been kind of used as a spare part this year after appearing in over 40 games last year, scored 8 goals, 20 points. It looked like he was on the road to securing a full-time roster spot, and instead, of course, they went on a major spending spree in the summertime. And he got boxed out of a spot. So just like we saw in a player like Tomasino, some of the younger players in Nashville getting moved out because they're not getting the opportunity because of all the long-term veteran contracts that they now have. So clearly, I think there's a mixed reaction within the fan base. A lot of fans are not quite pleased with some of the moves that Trotz has made. Obviously going along with Parssinen is a 2026 seventh rounder to the Avalanche in exchange for prospect Andre Pavel and a 2027 third rounder. Pavel's played 3 years of college hockey in Minnesota, and then has been a couple of years pro hockey, mostly in the American Hockey League. Has 2 NHL games to his resume, so most likely not a player that's going to likely ever be an NHL regular. So, not a great return, but then again, Parsonen's value wouldn't have been super high. The third rounder may turn into something down the road. It's kind of difficult to say, but an interesting move. Hard to say what direction we're going to see the Preds head, but right now, the way their season's gone, like I said, it seems like they're up to something to kind of gain a bigger move here, but we don't quite know exactly what that is. I know that they would like to add down the middle in the center position, but that's not easy to do. We'll have to kind of monitor Trotz and the Predators and see what they may be up to. Now, as I mentioned on the opener, the Dallas Stars are under investigation by the NHL after head coach Peter DeBoer let slip, but I'm not sure this would have been known otherwise. But they've made a CBA violation. And to me, it looks pretty cut and dry that they definitely had a violation. The fact is how it works is that on December 24th, 25th, and 26th, those days are considered dark days, full days off for all NHL teams and players. They are not allowed to be on the ice. There's no ice to be offered, no practicing, and you're not even allowed to travel. And the reason they do this is they want to make sure that players actually get a full mandated couple of days off for the holidays to spend with their families. And secondly, especially after Christmas for like Boxing Day, which is when this violation took place, because they usually start playing again on the 27th, generally how the calendar goes. Now, sometimes it's written in the CBA that if they decide to play on Boxing Day, that they'll have a mandated day off on the 23rd instead. Either way, they get 3 consecutive full days off. And the Dallas Stars held an optional skate on Boxing Day, December the 26th. Peter DeBoer discussed this in his media availability, and he said it was an optional skate, and he said that all the young guys show up to the optional skates because they're expected to. It's usually the veterans that if they need the time for maintenance or therapy or anything else, or they just need some extra rest, that they are more lenient with those guys going. That's why they make it an optional. It's really more an optional for the vets, not the kids. Even guys that are still regulars per se, but might only have 2-3 years experience, typically always go to these, right? So he was talking about the fact to media that they had this, and then of course later on went to say that he may have made a mistake and misinterpreted the rules, and that he is understanding that the league is looking into it. So like I said, clearly it's pretty cut and dry to me. They should not have had any ice time or practice, because the way the wording is that they cannot, players cannot be asked for their consent to be on the ice and to work or practice during that mandated 3 days off. The other thing too is the reason there's no travel either is to make sure that it's a level playing field as best as possible. So that way, the teams that are going to be home coming into the break, they don't have time to practice either on those 3 days, right? So that way they're not practicing. The teams that are traveling the day of when they get back to work on the 27th. It's just to let all teams do the same thing, and then the playing field has been leveled. In the past, it's not often that we see violations like this, but we've seen it before. In the last, I think, 20 years, I think it's happened twice. One time with the Toronto Maple Leafs, I think a few years back. And it was the same sort of thing. And now, if players on their own accord, and it's not team organized, go for a skate or something, I think they can probably get around the rules. But like in the case with the Dallas Stars, they had coaches on the ice. So that's the part that helps violate the rule. But we've seen fines in the past of up to $100,000. So I would suspect that we're going to see that, but we'll have to wait and see what the league comes out and says. Now, as I mentioned as well, in the World Junior Championships, yesterday's action, day 2, saw a major upset, probably the upset of the century, with Latvia defeating Team Canada 3-2 in a shootout. Team Canada just did not have a great game. I know the shots on goal and the stats, if you didn't watch the game and just looked at the numbers, you would think that they were lost to a hot goalie, and to some degree that was true. The Latvian goalie was amazing and did make a lot of good saves, but even though Latvia as a team had a lot fewer shots, they out-danger-chanced the Canadian group. They had more prime opportunities to score than Canada did. A lot of the Canadian shots were not considered dangerous or from the outside. The decisions for the player personnel, not only on the roster, but how they're being utilized between management and coaching, to me are absolutely baffling. And this is an embarrassing loss for Canada. There should be no good excuse why they lose that game. The Americans won against Latvia pretty handily today. Now, it wasn't a blowout like some people expected, so the Latvian team definitely has earned a lot more respect, and they've improved, and they are playing a hard-working team game. They're blocking shots, they're digging in, so you got to give the Latvians full credit, first of all. Obviously, it's not just because Canada played a terrible game. The Latvians were more than better, even better than advertised. And like I said, like they were sacrificing everything, blocking everything. Like, I mean, they still had well over 50 shots on goal. Counting the shootout, it was over 60. And I don't know. And they still blocked a ton of shots too. So the Canadian roster, to me, it doesn't look good enough. It's just that simple. The number of key high-profile names that they left off this roster, like, you know, they give Oliver Bonk quarterback in the power play when his teammate in junior is Sam Dickinson, who they're both on this team. And Sam Dickinson runs the power play in London. Bonk is not the quarterback. Sometimes he does see power play time, but not in that kind of a spot or role. And yet Sam Dickinson can't even get on the power play. I don't understand the coach's fascination. I like Bonk. He's a good player. Dad played a long time in Ottawa. Certainly a player that I expect will make the jump to the NHL, but I just don't understand the fascination with putting him as the power play quarterback when you got guys like Zane Parekh, Carter Yakimchuk, not even on the roster. You got Michael Misa leading the highest point totals, not on the roster. Andrew Crystal, not on the roster. You know, it's baffling, mind-baffling. I don't understand what they're doing, but the Canadians deserve to lose. There's no doubt. I've seen it coming gradually throughout tonight. And like I said, that was the upset of the century. And Canada definitely won't finish first in group play now. They can still have a strong tournament. They could still even win a medal, maybe even gold. But at this rate, if you can't beat Latvia, you're not going to stand a chance when they play the Americans on New Year's Eve. The other action saw Sweden demolish Kazakhstan 8-1. Slovakia squeaked out a win 2-1 over Switzerland. And the team Finland beat the Germans 3-1. So Finland's now 1-1. Germany falls to 0-2. Switzerland also falls to 0-2. Sweden goes to 2-0. And Slovakia would be 1-1 here as well. Now, as I mentioned, one of the key things that happened in that game for Canada is one of their top players who they're relying heavily on 17-year-olds instead of 19-year-olds. But Matthew Schaefer, who's expected to be one of the top one or two, maybe definitely top three picks in the 2025 NHL draft, had a really bad injury in the first period and not even halfway through, slammed hard into the net, ended up breaking his collarbone, and he is now done for the tournament. So that is also going to be a major blow for Canada, losing one of their top players. If they, bad enough that they lost and the morale and spirits are low, and I think that injury really shook them, to be honest, and they just never really fully recovered. Some of the shootout moves, too, were absolutely just lousy, in my opinion. But I could go on for hours about the Team Canada program and how bad that game was, but I tell you, that's a story for another day. That's all we want to dig into that here for now. Obviously, lots of other updates around the NHL. Fabian Lysell was recalled to the Bruins, get to play in the game against the Blue Jackets tonight. The Senators recalled defenseman Nicholas Matinpalo. They're on a 5-game road trip. He's there just for reinforcements because Artem Zub is still injured. He may not play. It'll just depend on if the other 6 guys remain healthy or not. The Blue Jackets today also finally had a good update on one of their top prospects, Jordan Dumais, formerly the Halifax Mooseheads. Dumais has been out injured all year and is healthy and ready to go, and will report to Cleveland in the American Hockey League. The Rangers, another update there. Zach Jones, one of many players under the microscope for potential movement, was a healthy scratch again today. And of course, like I said, they had a blowout loss against the Lightning, almost at the Islanders, but no, that's not the case. They're playing Tampa tonight. Another bad game, another bad loss. And we're going to talk about the Rangers here in just a moment. Capitals, Ovi was back against the Leafs, scored another goal. It's an empty netter, one of the easiest goals he's ever going to score in his life. But it gets one goal closer to breaking Gretzky's record. Nashville today as well, after trading Parsons, recalled Vinny Hinostroza from the American Hockey League. Now, as I mentioned, when it comes to some trade talk, we're going to focus heavily here on the Rangers in just a moment, but a couple other quick updates from Elliot Friedman on Saturday headlines tonight. We mentioned this before the break as well, but he says that before the holiday break, Detroit and Buffalo were scouting each other heavily. That appears to be picking up again. And before the Christmas break, there was some thought and belief that they may be getting close to actually getting a trade done. We don't know exactly who on each team is being looked at here. We've heard lots of talk about both of them not being happy with where their team is at and looking to make some changes and shake things up. We've heard that a lot of teams are inquiring on Dylan Cousins in Buffalo. Doesn't mean they want to move him. I don't think they really do, but they acknowledge the fact that the season's gone so poorly that they need to do something here. But it could be who they're looking at. I know Detroit, for example, would probably be interested in a defenseman because their defense core, as I've been mentioned since the start of the season, to me was one of the worst in the league. They could definitely use a major upgrade on the blue line. So I do wonder. Buffalo has guys like Byram that they're questionable to re-sign. I wonder if some sort of deal around that. But who would Detroit give up for a guy like Byram? That's another tough question, right? I mean, they don't have a lot of players that are excelling right now, and the ones that are doing well, you're not going to want to trade. You're not going to trade Larkin or DeBrincat, or you're not going to trade. They're not going to take a guy like Andrew Kopp or JT Compher off your hands. So it's difficult to say what they would offer. I mean, I know they're not going to want to move like Evanson or Casper or maybe Jonathan Berggren. Maybe might be. He's been rumored to be available in the past. There could be draft pick compensation. Hard to say. I don't know exactly what the deal would look like. That's just me speculating, looking at what both teams need. Detroit needs defense, whereas Buffalo, I think, really more than anything, just needs to shake up the roster. Like I said, we've heard a lot about Byram and Cousins being the two most talked about names, but doesn't mean for sure that they're the ones being discussed. But the scouting continues, and we'll see if they come up together on any kind of deal. St. Louis Blues are still looking to move Brandon Saad, and they're still trying to find a deal for him. He is working with them as well based on his contract clause with his trade protection to try to be a little bit more flexible as well. But again, Brandon Saad's a player that we expect to be moved sometime here in the new year. If not sooner. You never know. There's still a few days left this year, but sometime in the next few weeks or leading into the deadline. But we don't know exactly when the Blues are going to find that right deal, but they continue to search around and find a new home for the veteran winger. And in New York, like I said, another terrible loss today to the Tampa Bay Lightning. This team looks totally deflated. They just look like they're completely cooked, to be honest. I don't know if they can come back from this. The losses continue to pile up. And it's not like they're even all that close anymore. A lot of the losses are multiple 2, 3, 4 goal games. You're giving up shorthanded goals. Shesterkin hasn't been good. The team in front of them hasn't been good. Like I said, on the back end, we've heard K-Andre Miller is coming back from injury, but his name has been out there. Zach Jones has been a healthy scratch a few times. His name has been out there. After another loss tonight, can Peter Laviolette continue to survive here? We had heard before Christmas that he was seemed to be still safe and that they really weren't leaning towards a coaching change. But it makes you wonder, can he? How many more of these can pile up before you don't have a choice anymore? We've heard Chris Kreider's name being out there. He was a healthy scratch in the last game before the holidays as well. Reports do indicate that was not because of a trade that was close or anything. That was not roster management or asset management, as some call it. That was just the coach sending a message that he hadn't been good enough. You're looking at Mika Zibanejad. I know he's got lots of trade protection, and if he was traded, would have a lot to say. But the way he's played in his contract would be a tough sell on a lot of teams to take that on right now. He's a really good player, and I would like to think he could find his game and revitalize himself. But there was a point in the game today on the bench when things were getting out of control and they were down multiple goals. He looked like he was about to cry. I mean, we've heard reports from Larry Brooks and some other reporters saying that Mika is a very sensitive person and that, he has thin skin. And that when you hear he's one of those players that if he's discussed a lot in the media and things are not going well, that it really gets to him. And you know what? I can see that. And, just looking at his face on the bench, they're losing. It's just like, it's like the here we go again look. And it's like, but I swear he just looked like this poor soul that looked like he was ready to break down. Sometimes you just don't have answers for why things are going so badly, right? And that's just what it looked like to me. But between Kreider, Mika, they're both, all the names are out there. You have to think that jury's got to be working on something. This team looked completely cooked, out of gas, loss of interest, whatever you want to call it. We keep hearing the main name we've heard that they want to go after. And, at one point, of course, we heard the Rangers want Brady Tkachuk, and look what happened after that. Clearly that was a galvanizing point for the Senators to turn their season around. At least it sure looked that way. But the name we keep hearing is JT Miller. And again, we don't know that the Canucks are in a position where they're really going to want to do that. Hughes and Pettersson both missed today's game for Vancouver against Seattle. They ended up losing that game. They blew a lead. It was not a good game for the Canucks. They had a good start, but fell apart and gave up the lead and lost the game. Pettersson and Hughes are not expected to be out long term, but Miller and Pettersson seem to be playing better when they're on their own. I don't know. There's the whole drama there. We've seen some people suggesting that maybe if the Rangers offered up Lafreniere, would you do Lafreniere for Miller? I've seen that be out there. And I'm like, I think if I'm Vancouver, I just might do that. I mean, as much as you like JT Miller and you like the passion he brings and the skill level he has, Lafreniere is clearly an up-and-coming player who's much younger. That's a tough call, and by trading Miller, do you get a better version of Pettersson? Obviously there's that spin-off effect, right? So you don't know. I mean, that's not a rumored deal that's being discussed between the teams. I've just seen it out there amongst media members making suggestions on how they can work around this. I think a lot of reporters have had a field day with the Canucks drama, especially around Miller and Pettersson. And if you had to trade one, what could you get? And of course, we've heard forever about the Rangers being interested in bringing back Miller. And I think Sean Avery's interviews and comments that he's made out there has kind of stoked things as well about the Rangers and JT Miller reunion, being a possibility. So again, the Rangers just seem to be the team to watch right now. They seem to be imploding from within. So pretty much anybody and everybody there's on the table on the chopping block, including, you got to think the head coach Peter Laviolette is on that as well. I wouldn't be shocked if tonight or tomorrow we find out that they fired the coach. If they do, what do they do? Do they bring in somebody else? They've gone through multiple big name experienced coaches from Laviolette, Gallant. Do they go a new direction? Of course, before that you had David Quinn, who was newer to being an NHL head coach, but was there for a while. Now, this team has just seemed like, in recent years, we've had really good versions of the Rangers. We've had a couple of deep runs in the playoffs with this New York Rangers, club. And it just seems like it's all falling apart. It's just kind of weird. But that can happen. It can get away in a hurry. And like I said, a lot of these players, even though the Rangers feel like they went through that whole rebuild there not long ago, they did add a lot of veteran players along the way. So it wasn't really a traditional rebuild. It was more of a retool with some fortunate luck in the draft lottery where they got 2 picks back-to-back years. One was first overall, one was second. So clearly we'll see. Maybe they're going to bottom out here and get James Haggins, who knows. The Rangers have had terrific luck when they have been in the lottery here in recent years. So let me know your thoughts on all of today's news and rumors. What are the Rangers going to do? What moves are we going to see? Something has to give here. I expect something significant to drop with them sometime here in the near future. Let me know what you think in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, of course, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with the latest news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.